Sometimes the most expensive mistake a person can make costs nothing more than a single sentence. On a crisp spring evening in downtown Chicago, the Grand Lakeside Hotel glowed beneath thousands of golden lights as business leaders, philanthropists, elected officials, and community volunteers gathered for the city's largest children's charity gala. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors, while a string quartet performed softly beneath towering floral arrangements, creating an atmosphere of elegance that seemed untouched by the ordinary world outside. Television cameras quietly recorded the arrivals as reporters welcomed one distinguished guest after another. Among the evening's honored attendees was Nathan Brooks, a 51-year-old white billionaire chief executive officer whose charitable foundation had donated millions of dollars to children's hospitals throughout the country. Walking beside him was his 8-year-old daughter, Emily Brooks, whose bright curiosity often attracted more attention than her father's wealth. She smiled warmly at everyone they passed, waving politely to hotel staff as though every person deserved the same kindness. Nearby, moving gracefully between tables with a polished silver serving tray balanced confidently in her hands, was Maya Johnson, a 28-year-old black waitress wearing a neatly pressed black waitress apron. She greeted every guest with quiet professionalism, offering refreshments with genuine warmth while making certain every family attending the fundraiser felt welcomed. Unlike many of the executives filling the ballroom, Maya never sought attention. She simply focused on making the evening successful for everyone around her. As Nathan and Emily approached their reserved table near the center of the ballroom, Emily noticed a dessert display decorated with colorful pastries shaped like tiny flowers. She looked toward Maya with an excited smile. "Excuse me," Emily asked politely, "which one is your favorite?" Maya smiled back, pleasantly surprised by the little girl's kindness. "If you like strawberries, I think you would really enjoy the one with the white chocolate petals," she answered gently. Before Emily could respond, Nathan looked toward Maya with an amused expression that quickly became dismissive. A few nearby executives turned their attention toward the conversation. Nathan gave a short laugh before speaking loudly enough for several surrounding tables to hear. "You are just a waitress," he said with effortless confidence. "Leave the recommendations to people who actually know something." The laughter from two business associates followed almost immediately, though many guests remained uncomfortably silent. Emily's smile faded as she looked from her father to Maya, sensing something was wrong even if she could not fully understand why. Maya never allowed disappointment to reach her face. She simply lowered her eyes respectfully and answered with calm sincerity, "Of course, sir. I hope you and your daughter have a wonderful evening." She quietly stepped away to continue serving other guests, never raising her voice or defending herself. The music resumed, conversations slowly returned, and Nathan dismissed the moment as though it had never happened. Yet several people nearby continued watching Maya as she calmly greeted the next table with exactly the same kindness she had shown before. Emily glanced once more toward the waitress, clearly unsettled by what she had witnessed. High above the ballroom entrance, a large banner displayed the evening's theme in elegant gold lettering. "Every child deserves hope." No one in the room could have imagined that before the night ended, those simple words would take on a meaning that would forever change the lives of a billionaire father, his beloved daughter, and the woman he believed was only a waitress. The orchestra eased into another graceful melody as waiters and waitresses moved quietly through the ballroom, balancing polished trays beneath the warm glow of crystal chandeliers. Conversations returned to discussions about charitable donations, business partnerships, and upcoming community projects, allowing the uncomfortable exchange from only moments earlier to fade from most people's attention. Nathan Brooks accepted congratulations from fellow executives with the confidence of a man accustomed to admiration, while Emily remained unusually quiet beside him. Every few seconds, her eyes drifted across the ballroom until they found Maya Johnson once again welcoming another family with the same calm smile she had offered everyone else. There was no resentment on Maya's face, no frustration in her movements, only steady professionalism that somehow made Nathan's careless remark seem even smaller than before. Emily leaned closer to her father and softly asked, "Do you think she was sad?" Nathan barely looked away from the conversation surrounding him. "She is here to do her job," he replied matter-of-factly. "Do not worry about it." Emily nodded politely, but she did not seem convinced. Across the ballroom, the charity auction began as guests raised elegant bidding paddles in support of children's medical programs. Large digital screens displayed generous donations, while applause echoed through the room after each successful pledge. Maya continued serving beverages, carefully navigating between crowded tables without interrupting the presentations. She noticed Emily sitting alone for a brief moment, while Nathan stepped onto the stage to receive recognition for his foundation's latest contribution. The little girl smiled politely when Maya passed nearby, and Maya returned the smile with a small, encouraging nod before continuing her work. A few minutes later, Emily wandered toward a decorative indoor garden near the ballroom entrance where colorful flowers surrounded a small fountain designed as part of the evening's display. Several families admired the arrangement, while photographers captured cheerful moments for the charity newsletter. From across the room, Maya noticed Emily pause near one of the floral displays. At first, nothing appeared unusual. Then Maya observed the little girl's posture change. Emily reached lightly toward a nearby chair as though trying to steady herself. Her cheerful expression faded into visible discomfort. She blinked several times, taking a slow breath before attempting another step. The room remained filled with music and conversation, leaving almost no one aware that anything had changed. Nathan was still speaking with donors and local officials only a short distance away, smiling for photographs while discussing future fundraising efforts. Maya's attention never left Emily. Years of training had taught her that serious situations often began with small details that others overlooked. She immediately set her serving tray onto a nearby table without drawing attention to herself and quietly started walking toward the young girl. Emily tried to call for her father, but her voice was barely louder than the surrounding music. Several guests continued chatting without noticing her uncertainty. Maya gently quickened her pace, her expression focused but remarkably calm. She did not panic. She did not shout. She simply trusted her observation and moved with quiet purpose. At that very moment, Nathan turned away from another congratulatory handshake and finally looked across the ballroom. His smile disappeared almost instantly as he noticed Maya reaching Emily just before he understood that something was wrong. Within seconds, the elegant celebration that had seemed so perfect only moments before was about to become the most important night of every one of their lives. By the time Nathan reached the decorative garden display, Maya was already kneeling beside Emily with a calm confidence that immediately stood apart from the growing confusion surrounding them. Guests who had been laughing only moments earlier slowly fell silent as they noticed something unusual unfolding near the fountain. Maya spoke in a steady, reassuring voice that never betrayed panic. "Emily, I am right here. I need you to keep looking at me. You are doing a great job." The little girl responded with a faint nod, clearly comforted by the gentle tone. Nathan hurried forward, his polished shoes echoing across the marble floor. "Emily," he called anxiously as he dropped beside his daughter. "What is happening?" His voice carried more fear than authority for the first time that evening. Maya briefly looked toward him, maintaining remarkable composure. "Sir, I have already asked someone to call emergency medical services. They are on the way. Right now I need everyone to give her some space so she can stay comfortable." There was no hesitation in her words. She spoke with quiet certainty, and even experienced hotel managers instinctively followed her instructions. One employee calmly directed guests a few steps back, while another confirmed that the emergency team had been notified. Nathan stared at Maya with visible disbelief. Only minutes earlier he had dismissed her opinion as though it carried no value. Now she was calmly organizing the entire response while everyone else searched for direction. Emily kept her eyes on Maya, breathing more comfortably as Maya continued speaking softly to reassure her. Every instruction was measured. Every movement was deliberate. She observed Emily carefully, asked simple questions to help keep the child engaged, and continuously watched for any change in her condition without allowing fear to spread through the crowd. The ballroom had become almost completely quiet. Even the musicians had gently lowered their instruments as conversations stopped across the room. Several physicians attending the fundraiser stepped closer after identifying themselves, and Maya quickly summarized everything she had observed since noticing Emily's discomfort. The doctors immediately recognized that her observations were organized, accurate, and extremely helpful. One physician looked at Maya with genuine respect before turning his attention toward Emily. Nathan remained beside his daughter, feeling completely powerless. He had spent decades solving billion-dollar business crises through confidence and decisive leadership, yet nothing in his remarkable career had prepared him for watching his only child depend upon the calm judgment of someone he had publicly underestimated. As the distant sound of approaching emergency vehicles became faintly audible outside the hotel, relief slowly appeared on several faces throughout the ballroom. Within minutes, trained emergency medical professionals entered through the main lobby and reached the scene carrying specialized equipment. Maya immediately provided a concise explanation of everything that had occurred, including the exact sequence of events she had witnessed from the moment Emily first appeared uncomfortable. One of the lead paramedics listened carefully before offering a grateful nod. "That information is extremely valuable," he said sincerely. "You helped us understand the situation before we even arrived." Nathan heard every word. His eyes slowly shifted toward Maya, no longer seeing a waitress serving guests beneath elegant chandeliers. Instead, he saw a calm, capable woman whose compassion, preparation, and clear thinking had brought order to a frightening moment. Standing in the middle of the same ballroom where he had questioned her worth, Nathan felt something far heavier than embarrassment. For the first time that evening, he began to understand that true character is often revealed not by titles, wealth, or applause, but by the quiet courage to help another person when every second matters. The emergency medical team worked with calm efficiency as Emily was carefully prepared for transport, and the atmosphere inside the ballroom shifted from confusion to cautious hope. Nathan refused to leave his daughter's side even for a moment, his hand gently holding hers while the lead paramedic continued a careful evaluation. Before they began moving toward the waiting ambulance, one of the emergency professionals turned toward Nathan with a reassuring expression. "She is responding well," he said. "We will complete a full evaluation at the hospital, but the quick response before we arrived made a meaningful difference." Nathan closed his eyes for a brief second, releasing a breath he did not realize he had been holding. His gaze slowly moved toward Maya, who had quietly stepped back to allow the medical professionals to continue their work. She stood near the edge of the gathering with the same composed posture she had maintained from the beginning, never asking for recognition and never drawing attention to herself. Hotel employees whispered quietly among themselves, amazed that someone they had worked beside every day had remained so calm, while everyone else struggled to understand what was happening. Several guests who had witnessed the entire event looked at Maya with new admiration, remembering how respectfully she had treated every person in the room despite the public remark directed at her earlier that evening. As Emily was escorted toward the ambulance, she looked over her shoulder until she found Maya. With a tired but grateful smile, she softly said, "Thank you." Maya returned the smile and gently replied, "You are very brave. You are going to be just fine." Those simple words carried more comfort than any speech could have offered. Nathan heard the exchange without saying a word. Minutes later, inside the emergency department of a nearby children's hospital, physicians completed additional examinations while Nathan waited outside the treatment area. Every passing minute felt longer than the last. His mind replayed the evening from the beginning, but one moment returned again and again with painful clarity. He could still hear himself saying, "You are just a waitress." At the time, he had believed the sentence would disappear into the noise of the gala. Instead, it now echoed louder than every applause he had ever received in his career. Nearly an hour later, the attending physician stepped into the waiting area with a reassuring smile. "Emily is stable," she explained. "She will need observation for a while, but she is doing well. I also want you to know something important. The woman who responded before emergency services arrived remained calm, gathered accurate information, and helped keep your daughter comfortable until our team took over. Those early actions gave us valuable information and helped us begin treatment without unnecessary delay. Nathan listened in complete silence. The physician was not praising luck. After thanking the medical staff, Nathan walked to the hospital entrance where the cool night air replaced the warmth of the crowded ballroom. The city lights reflected across the quiet streets, but they no longer reminded him of success or achievement. They reminded him of perspective. Somewhere across the city, Maya had likely returned to cleaning tables and serving guests as though nothing extraordinary had happened. She had asked for nothing in return. She had not defended herself after being humiliated. She had simply chosen kindness when she had every reason to walk away. Standing alone beneath the hospital lights, Nathan finally understood that the greatest measure of a person's character is revealed when they have every opportunity to ignore someone who once underestimated them, yet choose compassion instead. The following afternoon, after Emily had rested comfortably through the night and her physicians confirmed that she was recovering well, Nathan Brooks made a decision that surprised everyone who worked closest to him. Instead of returning immediately to his corporate headquarters for meetings that had been scheduled months in advance, he instructed his driver to take him back to the Grand Lakeside Hotel. The ballroom had already been restored to its usual elegance, with staff preparing for another evening of events as though the previous night's extraordinary moments had quietly become part of the building's history. Nathan walked through the lobby without the confident stride that usually announced his arrival. This time he was not visiting as a celebrated donor or a respected business leader. He was searching for someone he had failed to recognize when it mattered most. The hotel manager greeted him warmly and assumed he had returned regarding the charity gala, but Nathan asked only one question. "Is Maya Johnson working today?" The manager smiled with quiet pride. She wore the same neatly pressed black waitress apron, moving with the same calm professionalism that had impressed every guest except the one whose opinion had mattered least to her. She noticed Nathan approaching and offered the same courteous smile she gave every visitor. "Good afternoon, sir. I hope your daughter is feeling better." Nathan paused before answering. "She is improving because of you." Maya gently shook her head. "The medical team deserves the credit. I simply helped until they arrived." Nathan looked around the quiet room before speaking again. "No, you did far more than that." For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The silence carried the weight of words Nathan wished he could take back. Finally, he lowered his eyes and said something that had become unexpectedly difficult for a man who had negotiated billion-dollar agreements throughout his career. "I owe you an apology. Yesterday, I judged you before I knew anything about you. I spoke with arrogance, and I was wrong." Maya listened without interrupting. There was no satisfaction on her face, only quiet attention. Nathan continued, "When Emily needed help, you had every reason to ignore us. Instead, you chose compassion. I will never forget that." Maya rested her hands lightly on the table and answered with gentle sincerity. "Holding on to hurt would not have helped your daughter. In that moment, she was simply a little girl who needed someone to stay calm." Nathan felt the truth of her words settle heavily in his heart. Curious now, but with genuine respect rather than judgment, he asked how she had remained so composed during such a stressful situation. Maya explained that several years earlier she had completed extensive community emergency response and first aid training after a close family member experienced a medical emergency. She had continued refreshing those skills every year because she believed preparedness was an act of kindness that anyone could offer the people around them. She never mentioned it at work because she did not believe personal recognition was important. Nathan realized that the remarkable woman standing before him had never hidden her character. He had simply failed to look beyond her uniform. As he thanked Maya once again before quietly leaving the hotel, he understood that genuine greatness rarely announces itself with wealth, titles, or applause. More often, it quietly serves others, expecting nothing in return except the chance to make someone else's tomorrow a little brighter than today. Over the next several weeks, life gradually settled into a familiar rhythm. But nothing felt quite the same for Nathan Brooks. Emily returned home smiling, laughing, and filling the house with the joyful energy that every parent longs to hear. Yet Nathan found himself thinking less about board meetings and quarterly reports and more about the quiet woman whose compassion had changed the direction of one unforgettable evening. Every major success he had celebrated throughout his career suddenly seemed incomplete without the humility he had recently discovered. One afternoon, while reviewing proposals inside his executive office overlooking the Chicago skyline, Nathan paused when his assistant placed a community outreach report on his desk. The report described how thousands of ordinary Americans lacked basic emergency response knowledge, often because training opportunities were limited or simply unavailable. Nathan immediately remembered Maya explaining why she had continued renewing her own skills year after year. She had never expected recognition. She had simply believed that being prepared was another way of caring for people. That simple philosophy stayed with him. Instead of setting the report aside, Nathan canceled the remainder of his afternoon meetings and invited leaders from his charitable foundation to an emergency planning session. Around the conference table, executives expected another discussion about fundraising targets or public relations initiatives. Instead, Nathan spoke from personal experience rather than financial strategy. The room remained unusually quiet as he described how quickly circumstances could change and how easily kindness, preparation, and courage could save precious time during an unexpected emergency. By the end of the meeting, a new initiative had been approved. The foundation would begin sponsoring free community emergency response and first aid training throughout neighborhoods across the city, partnering with local organizations so families, teachers, hospitality workers, office employees, and volunteers could learn skills that might one day help someone in need. Nathan insisted that the program should never be presented as his personal achievement. Instead, he wanted every event to emphasize the simple belief that every person, regardless of profession or background, could become someone's unexpected source of hope. A few days later, Nathan returned to the Grand Lakeside Hotel once again, not carrying a business proposal or media announcement, but a sincere invitation. He found Maya during a quiet afternoon between events and explained the new community initiative. "I know you never asked for recognition," he said gently, "but I believe people could learn something important from your example. Would you consider helping us design the training program?" Maya looked genuinely surprised. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "There are many people with far more experience than I have." Nathan smiled warmly. "Perhaps, but experience teaches skills. Character teaches people why those skills matter." Maya remained silent for several thoughtful seconds before accepting with quiet humility, making one request in return. She asked that the program focus on serving communities rather than celebrating individuals. Nathan agreed immediately because he realized that her request reflected the same values that had inspired the entire project. As they walked through the hotel lobby discussing ideas, several employees smiled as they watched the conversation. Not because a billionaire was speaking with a waitress, but because they could clearly see two people treating each other with genuine respect. Nathan understood that true leadership had nothing to do with standing above others. It meant recognizing the gifts that already existed within the people around him and creating opportunities for those gifts to improve the lives of countless strangers who might never know the story that inspired them. The first community training event took place on a bright Saturday morning inside a neighborhood recreation center on the west side of Chicago, where families, teachers, restaurant employees, small business owners, college students, and retirees gathered with a shared purpose. Folding chairs filled the large meeting hall, information tables lined the entrance, and volunteers welcomed every participant with genuine enthusiasm. There were no exclusive guest lists, no reserved seats for wealthy donors, and no difference between people based on profession or social status. Everyone entered through the same doors and sat side by side, united by the simple desire to learn skills that might one day help another person. Nathan Brooks arrived quietly with Emily, choosing not to stand at the front of the room immediately. Instead, he spent time greeting volunteers, thanking instructors, and listening to participants explain why they had decided to attend. Emily smiled as she recognized Maya Johnson preparing educational materials near the presentation area. Although Maya was no longer carrying a serving tray, her calm presence remained exactly the same. She welcomed each participant with warmth, answered questions patiently, and made every person feel comfortable regardless of their experience. As the program officially began, Nathan stepped to the podium, but instead of speaking about donations, business achievements, or organizational success, he shared a deeply personal story. The room became completely silent as he admitted that only a few weeks earlier he had judged someone based entirely on a job title and a uniform. He explained how his own pride had prevented him from recognizing the wisdom, preparation, and character standing directly in front of him. Looking toward Maya, he continued with complete sincerity. When my daughter needed help, the person who remained calm was the same person I had underestimated only minutes before. I believed I understood success because I had built companies and managed investments. That evening taught me something far more important. Character cannot be measured by a business card, a paycheck, or a title. Character is revealed by the choices people make when someone else needs them. Many in the audience glanced toward Maya, who lowered her eyes modestly, clearly uncomfortable being the center of attention. Nathan smiled gently before continuing. I asked Maya to help create this program because I wanted our community to learn from someone whose actions speak louder than any speech I could ever give. The audience responded with warm applause, not because they had been instructed to do so, but because they recognized genuine humility when they heard it. When Maya stepped forward to begin the training session, she did not mention the gala, the apology, or the recognition she had received. Instead, she spoke about preparation, teamwork, kindness, and the importance of remaining calm when someone needed help. She reminded everyone that ordinary people often become extraordinary simply by choosing to act with compassion. Throughout the day, participants practiced practical skills, encouraged one another, and left feeling more confident than when they had arrived. Emily proudly joined one of the youth learning groups, carefully following every lesson while occasionally looking toward Maya with admiration. As the afternoon came to an end, dozens of families thanked the instructors before heading home, carrying new knowledge that could someday make a meaningful difference in another person's life. Watching the final volunteers stack chairs and organize supplies, Nathan realized that the greatest investment he had ever made was not measured in dollars, buildings, or market value. It was measured in people who would leave that room better prepared to care for complete strangers, all because one black waitress had answered disrespect with compassion and transformed a painful moment into a legacy of hope. Months passed, and what began as a single community workshop quietly grew into a movement that reached neighborhoods throughout Chicago and eventually inspired similar programs in nearby cities. Schools invited instructors to teach parents and teachers. Hotels encouraged hospitality employees to participate. Local businesses offered meeting spaces free of charge, believing that stronger communities were built one prepared neighbor at a time. Nathan Brooks watched each new milestone with genuine gratitude, but he insisted that every announcement focus on the volunteers and instructors rather than himself. His leadership had changed in ways that surprised even his closest colleagues. During executive meetings, he listened more carefully before speaking. He made it a habit to learn the names of employees throughout every level of the company, greeting receptionists, custodians, cafeteria workers, security officers, and maintenance teams with the same respect he showed senior executives. The culture inside his organization gradually reflected that example. Managers began introducing recognition programs that celebrated kindness, teamwork, and integrity alongside professional achievement. Employees noticed the difference almost immediately. The workplace became more collaborative, conversations became more respectful, and people who had once felt invisible discovered that their ideas were finally being heard. Nathan understood that real transformation did not happen because of a single speech. Whenever participants thanked her for changing their lives, she gently reminded them that the greatest difference would come from the kindness they chose to show someone else in the future. Emily often joined the weekend workshops, eagerly helping younger children practice simple safety lessons while proudly introducing Maya as one of her favorite teachers. Watching them together always brought a quiet smile to Nathan's face. Their friendship had grown naturally, built not on the extraordinary circumstances that first connected them, but on mutual trust and genuine affection. One afternoon, while visiting a newly opened community center supported by the foundation, Nathan paused beside a large wall filled with handwritten notes from families who had completed the training. Some messages thanked the volunteers for giving them confidence. Others described moments when the skills they learned had helped them remain calm during unexpected situations at home, at school, or in their neighborhoods. None of the notes mentioned wealth or business success. They spoke instead about courage, preparation, kindness, and hope. Nathan stood silently reading every card until Emily slipped her hand into his. "Dad," she said softly, "I think people are smiling more here." Nathan looked around the busy room where volunteers welcomed newcomers, children laughed together, and neighbors who had never met before encouraged one another with genuine warmth. He smiled and answered, "They are." Sometimes all it takes is one person choosing kindness to remind everyone else what is possible. Across the room, Maya noticed the father and daughter sharing that quiet moment. She smiled gently before returning her attention to a group of new volunteers beginning their first lesson. She never sought the spotlight, yet the light she had brought into the lives of others continued spreading farther than she could have imagined. Without ever asking for recognition, a Black waitress had helped reshape not only one family, but an entire community that now understood the true value of treating every person with dignity before judging them by a uniform, a title, or a first impression. 1 year later, the Grand Lakeside Hotel once again hosted the annual Children's Charity Gala. And although the crystal chandeliers, elegant music, and beautifully decorated ballroom looked almost identical to the previous year, the spirit inside the room had quietly transformed. Guests greeted hotel employees with genuine appreciation, volunteers were introduced alongside major donors, and the evening's opening presentation celebrated not only financial generosity, but also everyday acts of compassion that had strengthened neighborhoods across Chicago. Nathan Brooks stood near the entrance with Emily, welcoming guests personally instead of waiting for applause from the stage. Success no longer meant being the most admired person in the room. It meant helping create a room where everyone felt respected. As more families arrived, Emily suddenly smiled with excitement and hurried across the ballroom. Waiting near one of the reception tables was Maya Johnson, dressed in elegant professional attire as a special guest representing the community training initiative that had now helped thousands of people throughout the region. Emily wrapped her arms around Maya in a warm embrace before happily introducing her to several of her friends. Watching the moment from a short distance away, Nathan felt a quiet sense of gratitude that words could never fully express. The evening continued with stories from volunteers, teachers, emergency professionals, hospitality workers, and families whose lives had been touched by the growing network of community programs. None of the speakers focused on personal recognition. Instead, they spoke about neighbors helping neighbors, strangers becoming friends, and ordinary people discovering that kindness often begins with a single decision. When Nathan was invited to the stage, the ballroom became silent. He looked across the audience before speaking with calm sincerity. "Last year I arrived believing success could be measured by titles, accomplishments, and influence. I left understanding that none of those things matter if we fail to recognize the dignity of the people standing beside us. The greatest lesson of my life did not come from a boardroom or a business deal. It came from someone who chose compassion after receiving disrespect. My daughter is with us today because one person refused to let pride become more important than kindness." Nathan then invited Maya to join him on stage. As she approached, the audience welcomed her with heartfelt applause that reflected admiration rather than spectacle. Nathan turned toward her and simply said, "Thank you for reminding me that character is the greatest form of leadership." Maya smiled gently before answering with the same humility that had guided every step of her journey. Every person we meet is carrying a story we cannot see. If we choose respect first, we will rarely regret it. Those few words settled quietly over the ballroom, leaving a deeper impression than any lengthy speech could have achieved. As the evening drew to a close, guests slowly made their way home beneath the glowing city lights, carrying with them more than memories of another successful fundraiser. They carried a renewed understanding that dignity is never determined by a uniform, kindness never depends upon status, and the smallest act of compassion can change generations. Nathan, Emily, and Maya stood together near the ballroom entrance, watching volunteers finish another meaningful evening. No one could erase the painful words spoken 1 year earlier, but those words no longer define the story. They had become the beginning of something far greater. Sometimes life changes because of extraordinary wealth. Sometimes it changes because of remarkable talent. But every now and then, the greatest transformation begins when one ordinary person quietly chooses grace over resentment, compassion over pride, and humanity over judgment. That is the kind of legacy that no amount of money can ever buy, and no passage of time can ever diminish.